I am Omari Hardwick, and you're watching WURD Backstage.
Greetings, Word family. This is Stephanie Renée. We're here at Lawnside Elementary School, where Omari Hardwick is here to do a meet and greet before a fundraiser later this evening that's all about bringing technology into this traditionally African-American and historically African-American enclave in South Jersey. We'll give you much more information about the history of this town, but also the reason why bringing technology into this space is so critically important. We are here today at Lawnside Elementary School with actor, philanthropist, and poet Omari Hardwick. We got to keep
Hello.
meeting like this.
I know, it's cool, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because, we have had an opportunity to talk relative to the release of Middle of Nowhere, and our Word audience loved the film, kept calling in and telling us how much they were enjoying your role in that and the thought process involved in humanizing incarceration and that experience. Then you and I got a chance to sit down during Black Star Film
Wasn't that
Festival
cool?
with Things Never Said and talk about, and really get a chance to feel the poetry and the role that it has in addition to all of the other things that you do. But more importantly, you were on my mind even before I found out about this event, because we just passed the very sad commemoration of the death of Trayvon Martin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you and a lot of other brothers from Hollywood wrote a beautiful piece called Little Black Boy Wonder. And so here we are at an elementary school today where your philanthropy and your love of poetry is going to have an impact on the young people who attend this school. So
Full circle, right?
yeah, and Black History Month, no less.
I know,
So
right?
how does that, kind of pulling all that together?
But it's ironic because, the average kid who should not be watching Power is a lot of whom I'll speak to today, in terms of their age, their chronological immaturity to take on the subject matter that Power is offering. I mean, when I was a kid, I couldn't watch. We would have snuck Power. You can't really watch it. So when you think about Trayvon being not much older than a lot of these kids, when God brought him home, what's ironic is I never have said this in an interview before, I don't think, but I almost was not doing that show because of that verdict. It wasn't his passing. It was the verdict that made it where I couldn't, I had finally purchased a home, my first home purchase in life, and I was living in Eagle Rock near Pasadena, California. And I was sleeping in the guest room upstairs, which is where I would write a lot. And one child in, I guess she was probably 4 or 5 months old. And I wrote all night in a frenzied way the piece that you heard everybody deliver pieces of on Little Black Boy Wonder. Kept me up all night, couldn't, it was after the verdict, after Zimmerman got off. And it really bothered me, to say the least. And so the audition for Power was the next day. And I said no to the initial meeting for Power. Maybe it wasn't even an audition. I mean, Courtney said she knew forever that she wanted, one Omari Lateef Hardwick to play the role. But whether stars, execs made me audition or not, which eventually happened, the initial meeting, which I didn't know Courtney at the time, so all I knew was 50 was the exec, Curtis Jackson was the exec producer. And I almost said no because, well, I did say no to the meeting because I was so taken by what happened to Trayvon that I think when I look at it, it was that I wasn't at a place to go then audition. I'm like, you can't, there's bigger things than I wake up and do the acting thing because God says wake up and do the acting thing. And, producers, I guess they decide whether you're pretty good at something or not because you keep putting food on the table, so I guess you're all right. More importantly than putting food on the table, the fans keep telling you that you deserve to have that food put on the table via that ability of yours. And so, because execs will say all kind of things, but when the fans say, that's to me the truth. And so I look back now and I'm like, wow, it's interesting that you posed the question that way because I've said in interviews, I didn't know whether Curtis could pull off a cable show of that nature. He had never proven that. He has a Midas touch with so many things, but cable, I don't know if he can.
Right.
I didn't know Courtney was the writer, as a female, black female. I'm definitely taking a meeting. And I didn't know those things. Curtis has obviously proven me wrong. Courtney has proven the brilliance of what she embodies. But more importantly, I think I was stuck on Zimmerman getting off for killing a little boy that looked like me,
Yeah.
you know? And it really messed with me. And so for me, it's proven, even in, it being difficult sometimes to answer that kind of question, when I think back on beautiful little Trayvon, who just has become an emblematic face for a bunch of black. He's just I don't know, God picks different people, right?
Right.
People always say, oh, Tupac and Biggie weren't assassinated, Martin and Malcolm were assassinated. Yeah, but for all intents purposes, in terms of what we grew up following, a leader is a leader.
Yeah.
Pac was a leader, Biggie Smalls was a leader, Malcolm and Martin were a different kind of leader. All four are dead. So it becomes semantics. Assassination, killing, black boys are dying. And when it happened to Trayvon the way it did, and President Obama took on what he took on in terms of the emotion that we all of a sudden saw, a little old artist from Decatur, the emotions, I get paid for the emotion being at the precipice of my fingertips. So it means a lot that we're here a little bit after that moment or that anniversary of Trayvon, and now I'm speaking to kids, and I'm always doing work with kids, and I'll continue to play roles like Ghost because he is a beautiful representation from his incredibly high IQ to the wrong that he's doing and the doting father that he is. Obviously doting with qualifications. He's a drug-dealing, doting father. But he's the beautiful gamut of all that we've seen in our people and our men. And so I'll always challenge the writers, the producers, everybody to make sure that he's as full as Omari is and as full as I think these kids can be. And so it means a lot. I'm doing a lot of work for Trayvon. When he passed away, I said on social media, I got you.
Yeah. And here in this elementary school, knowing that there are plenty of people who are going to benefit from your philanthropy in helping to donate so that technology is here for other young people to express themselves, particularly through,
the
the
camera
poetry.
can pan and see all of these computers. Dr. Strella said, $50,000 put in the arts program and the school itself so that kids can aid and have a cliff note of sorts in terms of their learning. We just, and that's what I was saying about the Oscars. It's not necessarily the trophy that you should ever care about. It's the opportunity to play in roles that Leo DiCaprio gets over in Omari. I'm complex and dichotomous and nutty enough to play a variance of roles that maybe other people that look like me, that are my competitors, don't play. But even for me, I'm not playing or getting opportunities to play the roles that somebody that doesn't look like me is playing. These kids are not getting an opportunity to be educated in the same way that other kids who are around their age but don't look like them in skin color and don't have the same names as them and don't walk the same way and don't look the same way and don't dance the same way. Maybe don't even say the same words on certain SAT moments of the SAT test. I don't even know if they're taking it anymore. The way that these counterparts that live on the other side of the world do and talk and feel and smell and dance. And so for technology to be that which has advanced not only in life, but advanced in terms of us having access to it. And if I can be a presence or a face or a voice to add to, I guess we should put money in this. Omari says it's cool.
Well, let's talk about the power of words, because part of the reason that this technology exists in this school is for other people to find their voice like you have through poetry, through the acting, and express it in that way. When did you discover that you had a facility for poetry, and talk about how that's evolved in your life, even to hosting another show where you invite poets on to share their work?
It was basic. I liked a little girl, and I wrote a poem, and that girl became my high school sweetheart, and I literally just wrote a poem. I must have been 14 years old, and I was like, I'm all right at this thing, or I'm not, but I'm okay at getting out whatever needs to be gotten out. And then you start to, you don't really know how good you are at anything, right, until you sort of do it enough times, and then you go, okay, it affects me as much as it's affecting people that claim it's affecting them. Claim is the operative word, because people could be selling you a bunch of whatever, like, no, you cool, but eventually you learn, like, okay, I'm all right at this. And so at that moment, my mother started to really reveal to me who my father was, and he's an attorney, came up as a black man who went to Holy Cross with Clarence Thomas, wore as many dashikis from torso up as you're wearing and neck down, afro that the wind could take to the left or the right, naming sons Malik, Omari, and Jamil, but was Christian, you know, and so I grew up with a man like that. I grew up with Huey P. Newton as much as I grew up with Tupac or LL Cool J. I grew up with Stokely and Eldridge Cleaver and Langston Hughes and Gil Scott-Heron. I grew up with a lot of real powerful images in my home, you know, and then had Lionel Richie and Stevie Wonder and Donny Hathaway playing in the backdrop. So for me, maybe it was always around me and I always was musical. But when she said your father was not just a lawyer or this civil rights activist from Savannah, which is where she's also from, but he's a poet, I didn't know any of that until the first time I wrote a poem. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking to myself, well, let me go be the guy that tells these fellow 14-year-old kids that are now, you know, 20 years my junior, let me tell them that it's cool to write. Because they'll believe it. If I say it's cool to write, they'll believe it, you know. And so that's what happened. I got to a place in my career where I was like, all right, the voice is mattering, the platform is big enough. I'm credible enough, you know, for them to go, okay, he's credible as a poet. He's good. And so that's what happened. And then, of course, Verses and Flow, as you speak about, came back full circle. And there was no slight or disrespect to Hill Harper, who hosted season 1, who I know very well as a fraternity brother of mine, Alpha. But more so, they were like, I want the poet who meets the actor. And in our generation, there's a couple of us, Saul Williams, Omari Hardwick, and some other ones, a lot of females. You know, Sonia Sohn, who did the incredible turn on the movie Slam with Saul. And then, of course, was on The Wire. Yes. But, you know, there's a couple that also know how important it is to not just be notified as that or dignified as that, but also how do you find the next Sonia Sohn, the next Saul Williams, you know, the next Sheehan Van Cleef, or, you know, NQ or Omari Hardwick. You know, that's a dying art, and it's kind of cool to revitalize it. And maybe if I can help revitalize poetry as an art form, it could help kids kind of remember our history, because we're forgetting our history. Mm-hmm. And folktale and fire pit storytelling smells a lot more like poetry than some of the things that we've been involved with. So I was around 14, and that's around the age of the kids that I deal with. So it's ironic.
Yeah, well, I know you need to get to the kids. So one final question. When we think about Lawnside Education Foundation, the fact that you have given that this is now a new step in your philanthropy in this historic African-American enclave in South Jersey.
I know, it's crazy.
You know, it's a wonderful kind of continuum. And so when you think about the next 20 years of your elevation in the art form and also finding ways to give back, and as a father, how do you see this kind of knitting itself together for the future of your philanthropy?
Just a bunch of younger, brilliant minds that I can delegate to, so I'm not so tired. And I think for me, what I see in the next 20 years is that you sit back and you smile and you're able to go, I helped the right person, or what Tupac used to say, it's not about I want to spark the mind of the kid that goes off to change the world. You know, Pac never said that his desire was to change the world per se, but I can spark the mind of the kid that goes off to do that. So what I know is what you should do is recognize the brilliance in kids around you. And so for the next 20 years, as long as these kids of choice, of mom choosing to have these kids, whether it be a mom that has no husband at home, trying to figure out how to pay 30 bills with $30. If I can come in and be somewhat of a conduit for her to have a male voice. So many boys and girls need male voices and black male voices. Yes. Then for me, the next 20 years becomes about being able to go, I figured out who to help, now they can go help, and now I'm not so sleepy.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.